Four people are having dinner on a restaurant terrace. Jennifer's wearing 2 large gold bracelets and gold rings on each of her fingers. Martin's fiddling with a brand new phone and checking the time on his smartwatch. Connor has a tattoo on his hand and a dazzling gold watch on his wrist. Steve doesn't have any watches, rings, or bracelets, but he is wearing a smart suit. Only one of them is a millionaire. Can you guess who? It's Steve. He's got car keys in his pocket, and there's a brand new sports car parked nearby. Jennifer has old ripped shoes. All that gold's probably fake. Martin's phone is a knockoff, and Connor has old ripped shoes, just like Jennifer. Mark's teacher is great, but he's also kinda weird. He never lets Mark go home without solving some of his tricky riddles. Here's the first one. How many apples are there on a maple tree if apples grow 5 on a branch and there are 8 branches on the tree? Okay, this one's easy. Apples don't grow on maple trees. This next one's going to be harder. Get ready, said the teacher. Where are there cities with no houses, forests with no trees, and rivers without water? You've got only 7 seconds. Yeah, this one's easy too. On a map. Right, said the teacher. One more and I'll let you go. Who's the person everyone takes their hat off in front of? Mark knew the answer immediately, probably because he's a huge fan of Brightside Riddles. Can you guess it? It's a hairdresser, of course. Unless you want a really weird haircut, I guess. Poor Fanny lived with her stepmother and 3 wicked stepsisters. Her dream was to go to her favorite influencer's New Year's party, but her stepmother, Ruth, was pretty mean. She said Fanny could go only if she did everything Ruth asked. Ruth asked Fanny to bring her some water, but only gave her a colander to carry it in. How's Fanny gonna do it? Fanny needs to freeze some water and put it in the colander. Technically, it's still water. Time to choose the perfect dress. Fanny has 3 dresses, a blue one, a red one, and a green one. Which dress should Fanny wear? Find the best one in 10 seconds. Fanny should wear the red dress. That button on the blue dress is about to come off, and one of her stepsisters spilled paint on the green one. Which sister put paint on her dress? All 3 stepsisters are pretty mean. Time to investigate. Fanny snuck into their bedroom. 3 beds for 3 sisters. Bella, the oldest one, Stella, the middle sister, and Ella, the youngest one. Fanny only has a few seconds. Help her out. Can you figure out who ruined her dress? Stella's the culprit. There's a can of paint right under her bed. There's something all people in this world do at exactly the same speed. What is it? Aha, they get older. It flies without wings and cries without eyes. What is it? It's a cloud. What can you see with your eyes closed? A dream. Okay, enough with the easy short riddles. Let's go back to some harder ones. Jack and Jill set up a challenge. Whoever answers yes to every question wins. Jill was sneaky. She realized that there was one question nobody could say yes to. What question is that? The question is, are you sleeping? She waited until Jack fell asleep and then asked him the question. Whoa, those guys are intense. Emily and Mary are putting on their makeup, getting ready for a night out. They have really similar tastes. Their phones look the same, so do their lipsticks, clothes. So which one of them has the more expensive stuff? It's Mary. Take a closer look at Emily. Her dress kind of gives it away, since it's obviously a knockoff. When Mike was 25 years old, he tied a ribbon on a cherry tree in his grandfather's garden. 10 years later, he returned to see how much higher the ribbon was. If the tree grew by an inch each year, how much higher would the ribbon be? It wouldn't have changed position at all. Trees grow from the top up. The trunk just gets wider. A green apple costs $1, a red one costs $2, and a blue one costs $3. What apples and how many of them did Frank buy, if we know that he spent $3 using only 2 bills? Frank bought a green and a red one. He paid $1 bill for the green one and a $2 bill for the red one. Yeah, he could have grabbed the blue one and given the same 2 bills, but blue apples don't exist. Gotcha. 2 houses are on fire. One of them belongs to Jack. He's an accountant. The other one is a luxurious mansion that belongs to James, a pro basketball player. Which fire should the police put out first? Police don't put out fires. That's the fire department's job. 2 people came up to a large river. There was only one boat, and it was pretty old and shabby. The boat can carry only one person at a time, but both people got across the river. How come? One of the people was already on the other side of the river. Only one person needed a boat. 3 friends fell asleep under a tree in the countryside. While they were resting, someone passed by and painted mustaches on their faces. When the friends woke up, they started to laugh. But then, all of a sudden, they stopped. Why? At first, they saw the mustaches on their friends' faces and found it funny. But then, they realized their friends were laughing too. They had mustaches on their faces as well. Alice was walking through a dark forest. Suddenly, she saw an old cabin. Hey, wonder if a witch lives in there. She wanted to try her luck and snoop around, but the door was locked. On the gate, though, was a note with a secret code. Well, can you crack this code? The answer is magic. 3 stars before karma means you need to get rid of the first 3 letters. 2 stars after gift mean you need to get rid of the last 2 letters. For coat, you need to get rid of the last 3 letters. Aunt Tilda is a huge fan of cats. She lives in a 1-story house full of cat garden statues, a cat rug, cat wallpaper, cat cushions, and about 100 cat fridge magnets. Oh, and the 25 cats that live with her. What color cat is in the painting upstairs? She lives in a 1-story house. There aren't any cat paintings upstairs. Ashton loves taking and making bets. Every time he meets his friends, he has a new one. Last Friday, he suggested a challenge. He said he could place a bottle in the middle of a room and easily crawl into it. This time, Ashton's friends were sure they'd win. It seemed impossible. Still, Ashton won the bet. Again. How did he do it? He said he could place a bottle in the room and crawl into it. So he placed a bottle in the middle of the room and crawled into the room. Sneaky. You have 2 ropes. If you burn each side of the rope, it will burn for 60 minutes. How can you measure 45 minutes if you have these 2 ropes and a box of matches? You need to burn one of the ropes from both sides. At the same time, you set fire on the second rope too, but from one side only. When the first rope burns down, the second rope will still have 30 minutes to go. Now, you need to set on fire the second end of the rope. It'll burn 2 times faster, and you'll burn both ropes in 45 minutes. You're in a photo gallery. After looking at the wall, you realize that one of the pictures doesn't belong. You see a raccoon, a llama, a football, and a balloon. Can you tell which is the odd one out? You have 7 seconds to guess. It's the llama. The other 3 objects have 2 double letters in their names, but the llama only has 1. Gabrielle cooked a lovely dinner for her friends. When everybody was at the table, she suddenly realized one of them didn't like the meal. Who was it? It was Mike. He secretly shared it with Gabrielle's dog. 3 plus 3 equals 8. Move just 2 matches to make this equation correct. You've only got 10 seconds. It's 9 minus 9 equals 0. Grab a match from the plus to turn the 3 into a 9, and one more match from the 8 to turn the other 3 into a 9. There are 5 apples in a basket and 5 people in the room. Each person takes an apple, but there's still only 1 apple in the basket. How come? The last person took both an apple and the basket. So there. Private Detective Deborah was doing some shopping at the mall. Suddenly she heard people arguing. The woman went there and saw a stressed shop assistant and several people crowding him. The poor man had found a smartphone and made an announcement, and now several people claimed it was their phone. One man said the phone must have slipped from his bag. A young woman said the gadget belonged to her, and an older woman shouted it was her husband's device. That's when the phone rang. For some reason, the shop assistant handed it to Deborah. The woman glanced at the screen and immediately gave the phone to the man. How did she understand whose device it was? Deborah saw the word wife written on the screen. Emily has 2 glasses filled with water. In the first glass, the water is heated up to 100 degrees. In the second glass, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. The girl drops 2 coins in the glasses at the same time. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? It'll be the coin in the glass with the warm water. The coin in the other glass won't sink at all. The water there is frozen. Jacob and his brother Jack were walking along the street. When they passed a grocery store, Jacob pointed at a young woman and exclaimed, "Oh, my niece is over there." His brother answered, "Oh, right, but it's not my niece." How come? The young woman is Jack's daughter. Ashley had a boyfriend, Mark, who was madly in love with her. Unfortunately, the woman didn't love him back. Once, she decided to leave him. Ashley knew Mark wouldn't let her go easily, so she ran away. But Mark was a very rich man and could find her almost anywhere. She had to be careful. 1 week later, Ashley was sitting in her hotel room when she heard a knock at the door. When the woman opened the door, she saw a man. She had never met him before. The stranger apologized. "Oops, I'm sorry, my bad. I was sure it was my room." He then turned around, went down the corridor, and disappeared in the elevator. Ashley rushed back into her room and started to pack her things. She instantly knew Mark had found her. How did she figure it out? No one will knock on their own hotel room door. It was Mark's man who was looking for her. The faster you run, the harder it is to catch this thing. What is it? It's your breath. David and his wife Jessica moved to another town. The place wasn't big. For the locals, new people coming to live there was a big deal. That's why, the next day, the couple's curious neighbors came to say hello. Karen introduced herself and said she was sure they'd become great friends. She had even cooked cupcakes for David and Jessica. Elderly Mrs. Latham told the newcomer she'd been living in the town for almost 80 years. Betty was extremely excited. "A man's come to live in our small town. And so good-looking at that. Awesome news." Two of the neighbors seemed a bit creepy, and only one looked normal. Who was it? Karen had decorated her cupcakes with something that looked suspiciously like eyes. Betty is too enthusiastic about David. As for Mrs. Latham, she is sure to know lots of things about the town and its inhabitants. She can be a useful source of information, and she cooked them some soup. Brandon's wife told him to cook several eggs, but the man had to boil them for exactly 2 minutes. She left her husband 3 hourglass timers for 3, 4, and 5 minutes. How can the man boil the eggs for exactly 2 minutes? Brandon waited until the water started to boil. Then he turned over the 3 and 5 minute timers. When the 3-minute timer ran out, he dropped the eggs into the water. And when the 5-minute timer ran out, he had his perfectly boiled eggs. It was the first time Eric sailed his brand new yacht. But the man seemed to be out of luck that day. A bad storm sank the yacht, and Eric hardly had any time to make it to the surface. Half conscious, he ended up on some beach. In the morning, the man realized he was stranded on a tiny, uninhabited island. No radio, no cell phone, no means of communication whatsoever. And the island had no trees to make a smoke signal. On the third day, Eric noticed a small plane circling in the sky over the island. Were they searching for him? But the aircraft was flying too high, and the pilot couldn't see Eric. And still, the man did something, and soon he was picked up by a rescue helicopter. How did he attract the pilot's attention? Eric picked up some stones and used them to write SOS on the sand. Helen lives in Singapore with her husband Dennis. Once, she tells her husband she wants to visit her aunt who lives in Italy. Dennis doesn't mind, but he asks his wife to send him a photo as soon as she gets to Europe. When Helen lands in Rome, she sends Dennis a selfie. Under the picture, she writes, "Ciao from Italy, I've just arrived." After looking at the photo, Dennis realizes his wife lied to him. How did he know? In the picture, the clock on the wall shows exactly the same time as the clock in the kitchen, which is in Singapore. If Helen was in Rome, the clock would show a big time difference. One day, Christopher decided he had to develop his logical thinking skills. The guy found a tutor and started visiting him to have private lessons. But this teacher had one interesting habit. Closer to the end of each lesson, he always gave Christopher several riddles. The guy wasn't allowed to go home until he solved them. This Friday, the first riddle went like this. How can you make 6 into an odd number? Tricky. How? He removed the letter S and got IX. That's 9 in Roman numerals. But the guy knew it was just the beginning. The next riddle was even more difficult. It's thin, but when water splashes it, none seeps through. When hit, it changes color. It covers an incredibly complex thing, yet it's very easy to flex. What is it? At first, Christopher didn't have any idea. Duh, he'd have to stay and crack riddles till midnight. Luckily, in a moment, it dawned on him. It's the skin. Christopher's tutor was impressed with the guy's progress. "Okay," he said, "one more riddle and you can go home." 3 doctors said that Ryan was their brother, but Ryan claimed he didn't have any brothers. Who was lying? Christopher figured out right away that everyone was telling the truth. All the doctors were Ryan's sisters. Whew, he could finally go home. The morning after a heavy snowfall, Justin went outside and stopped in his tracks. He saw there was twice as much snow on top of his garage as there was on his neighbor's. Still, Justin didn't get surprised or upset. Why? Justin's garage is twice as big as his neighbor's. No wonder it also has twice as much snow. Amy went on holiday to the seaside and met 3 guys there. They were friends, but it didn't stop all of them from trying to impress the girl. In the evening, they all met in a restaurant to have dinner, and the guys started to tell Amy about their adventures. Sam boasted, "I'm a pilot, and I've already traveled all over the world." Larry said, "I once took part in an expedition to the North Pole. It was amazing. I saw penguins and polar bears." Jerry barged in, "And I'm an astronaut. When I was in space last time, I went on a spacewalk. I wanted to see our planet from above, but I was almost blown away by a strong wind." Who's lying to make a better impression? Both Larry and Jerry are lying. Penguins live near the South Pole, and there's no wind in outer space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. Andrew and Gary are twins. They were born just 1 minute apart, and Andrew is the elder of the two. But for some mysterious reason, they celebrate their birthdays 2 days apart once every several years. How is this possible? Andrew was born at 11:59 p.m. on February 28. It wasn't a leap year. So Gary, who appeared just 1 minute later, was already born on March 1st. That's why, during leap years, they have 2 days between their birthdays. A famous scientist went missing. The last time his colleagues saw him, he was in his laboratory. When the police arrived, they found a calendar lying on the man's table. There were several numbers written in pencil at the bottom: 6, 4, 9, 10, 11. The police officers had 5 suspects: David, Sarah, Jason, Betty, and Kevin. Who is behind the scientist's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers stand for months, and the first letter of each month spells the name of the criminal. So the 6th month is June, and the first letter of June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter of April is A, and so on. Smarty pants.